Hey everyone, this is Lesley Rieland, and I'm just checking in with you today from a beach nearby my house. It's a public access point, so I apologize right now ahead of time if there's a lot of noise in the background. But very quickly today, I just want to bring up something about grace. You know, there's always a debate kind of about what true grace is, whether it's hyper grace, is it grace that basically leads a person to licentiousness? You know, Paul addresses this, and obviously he has to correct people in their view of the grace that he was preaching, saying you can't just use it as grace to do whatever you want, and you know, God's got you covered because of his grace. That's grace for licentiousness. So that's an incorrect view. But I also want to point out that it's interesting, what was Paul's preaching like, that people actually had the allowance to think of it to such an extent. So the grace that he was preaching must have been, so if I can use the word extravagant, that they could actually get the idea in their head for that, that Paul then had to correct. So I just want to toss this out there for you, a verse that I find to be one of the best, not perfect, but best litmus tests for how you view grace. And really what it is I'll make it less technical perhaps. And it's so important to understand what your true view of God's face is towards you. And I think this verse is a really good way of gauging that within your life. In the passage where Jesus comes upon the woman caught in adultery, and the Pharisees are there, and they're wanting to stone her to death, but Jesus interrupts it. So, you know, he says, whoever is without sin, cast the first stone. And, you know, you probably know the story, but the people who maybe have a little too, if I could say, hyper grace, now, again, not always, but they tend to stop the verse short. And they'll say, Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. Period. And they don't continue on from there. Well, then the people who are not of that category feel the need to step in and correct those who stopped short. And they'll say, yes, but Jesus says, now go and sin no more. So my question there is, what do you view the face of God as when it comes to that point? So in other words, you know, I can see some people when they bring that correction, that they're more of, I don't want to say judgmental tone, but an agitated tone, and they're quite harsh in saying that neither, you know, now go sin no more. So what if someone were to go and stumble into sin again, that same sin? What if this woman had once again been caught in adultery? So I want you to stop and think about that. If you're in the camp that makes sure that that second part of the verse is added on, rightfully so. But what is your view of God in doing so? So if someone goes and stumbles, do they come back to a Jesus who's ready to pick up a stone? Or do they come back to a Jesus who they once again find grace in? So this is really important, what your view of God actually is. How do you view his face towards you or towards someone who is struggling with sin? So if they come back, is Jesus picking up the stone? So is the go and sin no more an ultimatum? Or there's a third option. Is the go and sin no more a relational stepping into that woman's life and trying to point her towards the path of life? See, so there's really three options here. And I think there's so much imbalance either one way or the other in the church. I do know that those who get agitated and feel the need to correct, I have to say that it's not judgment that leads people to God. It's His kindness, it's His goodness that leads people to repentance. So it's a worthy thing to stop and think about, is what do you view His face as? And then how are you going to present that face to the world? I'm going to just leave you with that. Love you guys.